My son's teacher called saying he's been absent for 3 weeks. He's been going to school every single day. Mrs. Hoffman's voice carried that particular blend of concern and accusation that teachers reserve for negligent parents. Mr. Brennan, we need to discuss Ethan's attendance. He hasn't been in class for 3 weeks now, and we've received no communication from you about extended illness or family emergency. This is highly irregular. I was standing in my garage organizing tools while Ethan was supposedly at school, exactly where he'd been every morning for the past month. I'd watched him get on the bus at 7:15 that very morning, backpack slung over his shoulder, headphones in his ears. There must be a mistake, I said, setting down the wrench I'd been holding. Ethan goes to school every day. I put him on the bus myself. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. When Mrs. Hoffman spoke again, her voice had shifted from accusatory to confused. Mr. Brennan, I mark attendance every morning at 8:30. Ethan's seat has been empty for 15 consecutive school days. Are you certain he's getting on the bus? My heart started hammering in a way that felt unreasonable. Of course Ethan was getting on the bus. I watched the doors close behind him every morning, watched the bus pull away from our curb, confirmed with him every afternoon that school was fine, homework was manageable, nothing unusual to report. I'll look into this and call you back, I said, already heading inside to grab my keys. The school was a 20-minute drive through suburbs that all looked identical. Identical houses, identical lawns, identical minivans in identical driveways. I'd lived here for 6 years since the divorce, raising Ethan in this manufactured community that promised safety and good schools and the kind of normalcy that felt increasingly like a lie. Mrs. Hoffman met me in the main office, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses hanging from a chain and the tired eyes of someone who'd been teaching too long to be surprised by anything, except she looked surprised now. Thank you for coming so quickly, she said, gesturing toward a conference room. I've pulled Ethan's attendance records and spoken with his other teachers. The situation is consistent across all his classes. She spread printouts across the table. Attendance sheets marked with red X's dating back 3 weeks, September 5th through September 26th. Every single day marked absent. My hands were shaking as I picked up the first sheet. This doesn't make sense. Ethan leaves the house at 7:15 every morning. He comes home at 3:30 every afternoon. He talks about school, about assignments, about his friends. How can he be marked absent when he's clearly attending? Mrs. Hoffman's expression shifted from confusion to something closer to concern. Mr. Brennan, children Ethan's age are remarkably creative when they want to avoid something. Is there anything happening at home that might make him want to skip school? Bullying? Academic struggles? Social anxiety? I thought about Ethan over the past month. Quiet as always, but not unusually withdrawn. Completing homework at the kitchen table every evening, asking for help with algebra problems, mentioning a group project in science class. Everything normal, everything routine. Nothing I'm aware of, I said. And if he's not coming to school, where is he going for 7 hours every day? That was the question that made Mrs. Hoffman's face go pale. Because if Ethan was getting on the bus but not arriving at school, something was very wrong. She picked up the desk phone and dialed a 3-digit extension. This is Hoffman. I need to speak with transportation about Route 23. Yes, it's urgent. The transportation coordinator arrived 10 minutes later, a heavy-set man named Carl, whose job was tracking every bus route in the district. He pulled up Route 23 on his tablet, scrolling through driver logs and GPS data. Bus 23 runs the Northwest Subdivision route. Driver is Paul Hendricks, been with the district 12 years. Clean record. He tapped the screen. According to the log, your son's stop had pickups every day for the past 3 weeks. Driver marked him as boarding. Mrs. Hoffman leaned forward. So the bus driver confirms Ethan got on the bus, but Ethan never arrived at school. Where did he go between the bus and the building? Carl's fingers moved across the tablet, pulling up GPS tracking data. Let me check the route. The GPS data showed Route 23 following its normal path every morning. Residential pickups, main roads, arrival at school parking lot at 7:55. No deviations, no unexplained stops. The bus arrived on time and en route every single day. This doesn't make sense, Carl muttered, zooming in on the data. If the kid got on at his stop and the bus came straight here, he should be in class. Mrs. Hoffman's voice was tight. Unless he's getting off before the bus reaches school. That possibility hung in the air, heavy with implications. Carl scrolled back through the GPS logs, looking for any stop that wasn't on the official route. Found nothing. The bus doesn't stop between your son's pickup and the school, not even for traffic lights on this route. I felt reality tilting in a way that made my vision blur at the edges. Ethan was getting on the bus. The bus was coming straight to school. But Ethan wasn't arriving at school. The logical impossibility of it crashed against the evidence in front of me. I need to talk to the bus driver, I said. Right now. Paul Hendricks was on his lunch break in the driver's lounge, eating a sandwich and scrolling through his phone. He looked up when we entered, his expression shifting from relaxed to wary when he saw the group approaching him. Paul, this is David Brennan, Carl said. His son Ethan is on your route. We need to ask you some questions about pickups over the past 3 weeks. Paul set down his sandwich, his face creasing with concern. Ethan Brennan, Quiet kid, always sits in the back with headphones. Yeah, I know him. What's going on? I kept my voice level despite the adrenaline making my hands shake. Ethan's teachers say he hasn't been to school in 3 weeks. But I watch him get on your bus every morning, and your logs show you picked him up. Where is he going? Paul's confusion looked genuine. He's going to school. I drop him off here every morning with the other kids. He gets off the bus and walks toward the building with everyone else. Mrs. Hoffman's voice cut through. What do you mean, walks toward the building? Do you watch students enter? Paul shook his head. I'm not required to. Once they're off the bus on school property, my responsibility ends. They head to the entrance, and I pull out to start the afternoon route prep. Carl pulled up the bus camera footage on his tablet. Every school bus in the district had cameras recording the interior for safety and discipline purposes. He scrolled back 3 weeks and pulled up the morning of September 5th. The footage showed students boarding at various stops. Ethan visible in frame getting on at 7:23, moving to the back of the bus, sitting down with his backpack, putting in headphones. Normal. Routine. Exactly what I'd seen from the curb every morning. Carl fast-forwarded to the school arrival. The timestamp showed 7:55. Students started standing, gathering backpacks, filing toward the front. Ethan was visible among them, moving with the crowd, exiting the frame as the bus emptied. There, Paul said, pointing at the screen. He got off with everyone else. I don't know what happened after that. Mrs. Hoffman's jaw was tight. We need to see exterior camera footage. The school has security cameras covering all entrances. We moved to the security office where a bored-looking guard named Thomas pulled up the archived footage. September 5th, 8 o'clock, main entrance camera angle. Students streaming through the doors in clusters and groups. Backpacks bouncing, conversations flowing. Mrs. Hoffman pointed at individuals she recognized. That's Aisha from third period. That's the Kowalski twins. There's Jeremy from the soccer team. She kept scanning faces, looking for Ethan. He never appeared. Thomas scrubbed through the footage at double speed. 8 o'clock became 8:15, became 8:30. The stream of students slowed to a trickle, then stopped completely. Ethan wasn't in any frame. Check the other entrances, Mrs. Hoffman said, her voice sharp with growing alarm. Thomas pulled up the side entrance camera, the gym entrance, the auditorium doors. We watched footage from every possible entry point into the building. Ethan didn't appear in any of them. A 13-year-old boy had gotten off the bus on school property and vanished between the parking lot and the doors. We need to call the police, I said, my voice sounding distant and strange to my own ears. My son is missing. The police arrived within 20 minutes. 2 officers, one older with graying temples named Sergeant Vasquez, one younger named Officer Chen, who took notes while Vasquez asked questions. I walked them through everything: the morning routine, the bus pickup, the teacher's call, the attendance records, the camera footage showing Ethan getting off the bus but never entering the building. Vasquez listened with the neutral expression cops develop after years of hearing impossible stories. Mr. Brennan, I need to ask some difficult questions. Is there any chance Ethan is staying with his mother? Any custody issues we should know about? My ex-wife lived in California, had minimal contact with Ethan by her own choice. She sees him maybe twice a year. There's no custody dispute. She's not involved. Vasquez made notes. Does Ethan have any history of running away, truancy, behavioral problems? I shook my head, feeling the weight of being judged as a parent. No, he's a good kid. Quiet, keeps to himself, but responsible. Does his homework, follows rules, never been in trouble. The officer's expression suggested he'd heard similar descriptions from parents who turned out to be completely wrong about their children. We'll need recent photos, a list of his friends, any places he likes to go. We'll also need to search your home. The implication was clear. They were treating this as a potential runaway situation, where the parent was the last to know their child was struggling. I provided everything they asked for. Photos from my phone showing Ethan at his last birthday, at a baseball game over the summer, doing homework at the kitchen table just 2 nights ago. A short list of friends from school who I barely knew because Ethan rarely had people over. Permission to search the house even though the violation of it made my skin crawl. While officers went through Ethan's room, I sat in the school conference room with Mrs. Hoffman and Vasquez watching more security footage. We went back through every morning for 3 weeks, watching the same pattern repeat. Students exiting the bus in clusters, flowing toward the entrance, entering the building. Ethan visible in the bus interior footage getting off. Ethan never visible in the exterior footage approaching the doors. Where is he going? Mrs. Hoffman whispered, more to herself than anyone else. There's nothing between the bus lane and the entrance except parking lot and lawn. Vasquez was studying the layout. Are there any blind spots in the camera coverage? Any areas where someone could walk without being recorded? Thomas pulled up a map of camera positions overlaid on the school grounds. The coverage was extensive, but not perfect. There were gaps between camera angles, small areas where someone could potentially move undetected if they knew exactly where to walk. Here, Thomas said, pointing to a space between the bus lane and the building. If someone exited the bus and immediately moved behind this equipment shed, they'd be out of frame until they emerged near the faculty parking area. That corner camera has a blind spot. Vasquez stood up. Show me. We walked the grounds, Thomas leading us to the equipment shed, a small structure housing maintenance tools and lawn equipment. The building created a blind spot roughly 15 feet wide. Someone exiting the bus could reach the shed without being recorded if they moved quickly and knew where the cameras were positioned. If Ethan came here instead of going to class, where would he go next? I asked, trying to follow the logic of a 13-year-old boy ditching school. Thomas walked us around the shed. Behind it was a service road used by delivery trucks and maintenance vehicles. The road led to the rear of the school property where it connected to a public street. No cameras, no oversight. A clear path off school grounds. He's been leaving campus, Vasquez said, his tone shifting from skeptical to concerned. Every morning for 3 weeks, your son has been getting off the bus and walking away. The reality of it was crushing. Ethan had been lying to me for weeks, getting on the bus to maintain the appearance of going to school, then deliberately avoiding the building and leaving the property. But why? And where had he been going for 7 hours every day? We need to track his route, Vasquez said, pulling out his radio. I want patrol units checking the area around the school, talking to businesses, checking security cameras from nearby locations. Someone has seen this kid. The search expanded rapidly. Officers canvassed the commercial district near the school, a strip mall containing a grocery store, a few restaurants, a pharmacy, and various small businesses. They pulled security footage from every camera they could access, looking for a 13-year-old boy with a backpack who shouldn't be there during school hours. It took 3 hours to find him. The grocery store manager recognized Ethan's photo immediately. Sure, I know that kid. He comes in most mornings around 8, buys a Gatorade and a snack, sits in the cafe area for a while using our Wi-Fi, thought he was homeschooled or something, seemed polite, never caused trouble. The manager pulled up their security footage, and there was Ethan, clear as day, sitting at a small table with his phone, looking relaxed and comfortable. Vasquez and I watched footage from multiple days. The pattern was consistent. Ethan would arrive at the grocery store between 8 and 8:15, make a small purchase, then settle into the cafe area. He'd stay for an hour or two, then leave. The cameras captured him exiting but didn't show where he went next. Where is he going after this? I asked, feeling my understanding of my son disintegrating with each new revelation. Vasquez was already making calls, expanding the search radius. More businesses checked, more footage reviewed. By evening, we had a map of Ethan's daily route. After leaving the grocery store, he'd walk to the public library 3 blocks away. The librarians confirmed he'd been a regular visitor for weeks, always polite, always quiet, spending hours reading or using the computers. What's he doing there? Vasquez asked the head librarian, a woman named Ms. Sterling who remembered Ethan clearly. Research mostly, she said, her voice careful. He's been very focused on particular topics. I noticed because it seemed advanced for his age. She led us to the computer station Ethan typically used, pulled up the browsing history from the guest account. The search queries made my blood run cold. Emancipation laws for minors, how to establish residency as a teenager, legal requirements for custody changes, rights of children in divorce situations. Ethan had been researching how to legally separate himself from his parents, how to gain independence at 13 years old. Ms. Sterling's expression was sympathetic but concerned. He also spent time looking at information about his mother, court records, social media profiles, addresses in California. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I'm wondering if I should have said something. Vasquez was already on the phone with California authorities, checking on my ex-wife's status. I sat in the library staring at the computer screen, feeling the full weight of my failure as a parent. Ethan had been so unhappy, so desperate, that he'd been planning to leave, not just skip school, but actually escape his life with me. And I'd been completely oblivious, thinking everything was fine while he researched legal strategies to get away from me. Mr. Brennan, we need to talk about what might be motivating this behavior, Vasquez said carefully. Is there anything in your home situation that might make Ethan want to leave? I thought about the past year. The divorce had been finalized 18 months ago, but the aftermath lingered. My ex-wife had moved across the country for a job opportunity, leaving Ethan with me because she said she wasn't ready to be a full-time parent. Ethan had taken it hard, become quieter, more withdrawn. I'd tried to compensate by being present, being supportive, being the stable parent, but maybe I'd missed something crucial. Maybe my version of being there wasn't what Ethan needed. His mother left, I said quietly. She chose her career over being in his life. He hasn't said much about it, but I know it hurt him. I thought we were working through it together. Vasquez's expression suggested he was connecting dots I couldn't see. And now he's researching how to go live with her. That's not about escaping you, Mr. Brennan. That's about reaching the parent who left. The realization hit me with physical force. Ethan wasn't running from me. He was running toward his mother. All the research about emancipation and custody changes wasn't about independence. It was about finding a legal path to California, to the parent who'd chosen to leave him behind. We need to find him, I said, standing up with sudden urgency. If he's planning to run, he might try to leave tonight. Vasquez nodded, already calling for additional units. Does Ethan have access to money? Credit cards, cash, anything he could use to buy a bus ticket? I thought about the allowance I gave him. The money he might have saved from birthday gifts. Maybe $200 total. Not enough for a cross-country bus ticket, but enough to get started. We returned to my house to search more thoroughly. Officers went through Ethan's room systematically, looking for evidence of planning. They found a backpack hidden in his closet, packed with clothes, toiletries, and a notebook containing detailed plans. I read through the notebook with shaking hands, seeing my son's careful handwriting documenting every step of a journey he'd been planning for months. Save money from allowance and odd jobs, research bus routes from local station to Los Angeles, find mom's exact address using public records, figure out how to make her want me to stay. The last line broke something inside me. Ethan wasn't just running to his mother. He was going to make a case for why she should keep him. Convinced he needed to prove his worth to the parent who'd abandoned him. Officer Chen found Ethan's laptop and pulled up his email. There were dozens of draft messages to his mother, never sent. Each one carefully worded, trying to sound mature and reasonable, explaining why he should come live with her. I miss you. I could help around the house. I wouldn't be any trouble. I promise I'll do well in school. Please, let me come. Reading them felt like witnessing my son's heartbreak in slow motion. Every draft was a plea from a child who didn't understand why his mother had left, who blamed himself, who thought if he could just be good enough, she'd want him back. Has his mother responded to any attempts at contact? Vasquez asked. I shook my head. She emails maybe once a month. Brief messages asking how he's doing, nothing substantial. She calls on his birthday and Christmas. That's it. Vasquez's jaw was tight, with barely concealed anger. Not at me, I realized, but at the situation. At a mother who'd abandoned her child, and a child who was still desperate for her love. We need to contact her directly. Make sure Ethan hasn't reached out through other channels and confirm she's not facilitating this. The call to my ex-wife went about as well as expected. She was surprised to hear from police, defensive when told Ethan had been skipping school and dismissive of the idea that he was planning to run to California. That's ridiculous, Jennifer said, her voice tinny through the speakerphone. He knows I don't have room for him right now. My apartment is barely big enough for me, and my work schedule wouldn't allow for childcare. We've discussed this. The casual way she referred to parenting as childcare made my teeth grind. Ms. Brennan, your son has been systematically planning to travel across the country to reach you, Vasquez said, his professional tone barely masking his disgust. He's been skipping school for 3 weeks, researching emancipation laws, and saving money for a bus ticket. This is serious. A long pause. Well, if he shows up here, I'll just send him back. David has full custody. This isn't my problem. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling rage and heartbreak mixing into something toxic. This was the woman who was supposed to love Ethan unconditionally, the parent who'd brought him into the world, and she'd just called him not my problem to a police officer investigating his disappearance. Vasquez set down the phone with careful control. Some parents don't deserve their children, he said quietly. It was nearly 8 o'clock when I got the call. Unknown number, but I answered immediately, hoping for news. Dad? Ethan's voice was small and scared. I need you to come get me. The relief was overwhelming, immediately followed by fresh terror. Where are you? Are you safe? He gave me an address in a neighborhood I didn't recognize, about 30 miles from home. I'm at a bus station. I was going to buy a ticket, but I don't have enough money, and I got scared, and I don't know what to do. Vasquez was already moving, gesturing for officers to follow. Stay exactly where you are, I said. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming right now. The drive took 25 minutes that felt like hours. The bus station was a grim building in a rough part of town, the kind of place no 13-year-old should be alone after dark. I found Ethan sitting on a bench outside, his backpack clutched to his chest, his face streaked with tears. He looked younger than 13 in that moment, looked like the little boy he'd been before the divorce shattered his world. I dropped to my knees in front of him, pulling him into a hug that he resisted for only a second before collapsing into. I'm sorry, he sobbed into my shoulder. I'm sorry, I just wanted to see Mom. I just wanted her to want me. The broken desperation in his voice made my own tears start. I know, buddy. I know. We stayed there while police gave us space, while other travelers moved around us, while Ethan cried himself empty of weeks of pain he'd been carrying alone. In the car on the way home, Ethan told me everything. How he'd started researching after his mother missed his birthday call. How he'd found her social media and seen photos of her at parties and dinners and work events, living a life that didn't include him. How he'd convinced himself that if he just showed up, if he made it easy for her, she'd realize she wanted him after all. She has a boyfriend, Ethan said quietly, staring out the window. I found pictures of them together. She looks happy, happier than she ever looked with us. The pain in his voice was raw and devastating. This was what he'd been processing alone, what had driven him to skip school and plan an impossible journey. The realization that his mother had moved on to a life she preferred, a life without him in it. Your mother leaving wasn't about you, I said, knowing the words were inadequate but needing to say them anyway. It was about her own issues, her own failures. You are not the problem, Ethan. You have never been the problem. He didn't respond, just kept staring out the window with tears running down his face. At home, I made him hot chocolate, and we sat at the kitchen table in silence for a long time. Finally, Ethan spoke. Are you going to punish me for skipping school and lying? I thought about punishment, about consequences, about what this child actually needed. We're going to get you help, I said. A therapist who specializes in kids dealing with parental abandonment. Someone you can talk to about everything you've been feeling. And we're going to work together to make sure you know you're wanted here, with me. The next morning, I called Mrs. Hoffman and explained what had happened. She arranged for Ethan to meet with the school counselor, to develop a support plan, to catch up on missed work without penalty given the circumstances. The principal agreed to excuse the absences as a mental health crisis, which is exactly what it had been. Ethan started therapy the following week. Slowly, painfully, he began unpacking the trauma of his mother's abandonment. The therapist explained that children often blame themselves for parental rejection, that Ethan's attempt to run to California was really an attempt to rewrite the narrative, to prove he was lovable enough to keep. Understanding the psychology didn't make it hurt less, but it gave us a framework for healing. 6 months later, Ethan was back in school full-time, his grades improving, his demeanor lighter. He'd made real friends through a support group for children of divorce. He'd started talking about his feelings, instead of hiding them. And he'd stopped checking his mother's social media, accepting with heartbreaking maturity that she wasn't going to change. Jennifer sent a birthday card with a generic message and a check for $50. Ethan cashed the check and bought himself a new video game. He didn't cry about the impersonal card, didn't wait by the phone for a call that never came. He was learning to accept the reality of his mother's limitations without internalizing them as his own failure. It was progress, painful and incomplete, but progress nonetheless. Some mornings, I still watched him get on the bus with a lingering fear that he'd disappear again, but he always came home, and slowly I learned to trust that he would keep coming home, because this time, he knew he was wanted here. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.